You've probably seen the advice repeated all over the internet. If you want a faster WordPress site, you need to disable WP-Cron. People are told the pseudo-cron system fires on every single page load, dragging down performance. So they dive in and alter core server files, hoping to shave a few fractions of a second off their loading times to get a better speed test score. But the documentation doesn't usually mention what happens next. When you turn this off without configuring a replacement correctly, your automated backups stop running. Scheduled posts never publish. WooCommerce receipt emails sit in a dead queue indefinitely. The decision to change your cron configuration actually has very little to do with page speed. The real trade-off you are making is about protecting your server's reliability and ensuring your background automation fires exactly when it needs to. This chart shows the real measured cost of a WordPress cron check compared to a standard page load on a production server. That massive bar is an uncached page request, taking 1,540 milliseconds. That tiny slice at the end is an empty WP-Cron check. It takes exactly 18 milliseconds. At 18 milliseconds, the cron check accounts for roughly 1.17% of the entire request it rides along inside. The background process is not the bottleneck. To confirm this, we audited 26 completely different WordPress installations on a shared server. 100% of them were running the default WP-Cron configuration. Out of 676 scheduled events across those sites, 0 were overdue. The optimization blogs describe the default setup as a fragile, performance-draining flaw. The hard data shows it actually handles routine scheduling quietly and efficiently, without dragging down the visitor experience. If your WordPress site feels slow, hunting down a 1% cron optimization ignores 98% of the actual problem. You fix speed by implementing a proper server-level caching layer, leaving WP-Cron entirely alone. That doesn't mean you should always stick with the default. There are 4 specific conditions where the default setup genuinely fails, and you absolutely should disable it. Condition 1 occurs when your scheduled jobs are time-critical. The default system has no internal clock. It only checks the queue when a visitor loads a page. If you need something to run exactly on the hour, you cannot rely on it. This timeline shows condition 2, low traffic with a strict deadline. A 3 a.m. database backup sits waiting in the queue overnight. It isn't until a morning user visits at 7 a.m. that the trigger fires, forcing the backup to run 4 hours late. For quiet sites that rely on strict deadlines, moving off the default setup trades an unpredictable, traffic-dependent trigger for a precise, guaranteed server clock. Condition 3 applies to high-volume e-commerce platforms that run heavy background queues, like a WooCommerce store utilizing Action Scheduler. An empty queue check takes 18 milliseconds, but executing a massive backlog of abandoned cart emails takes real processing power. If that happens during a page load, your background maintenance is actively competing for server CPU with a live customer trying to finish checking out. And that brings us to condition 4, hitting your server's entry process limit during high traffic spikes. Every default cron run occupies a PHP worker thread. If you only have 15 concurrent processes allowed on your hosting plan, and background tasks start eating them up during a traffic surge, your server will eventually reject real visitors and throw a 508 resource limit error. High concurrency sites prevent this by disabling WP-Cron. Moving those background tasks completely out of the visitor worker pool ensures that a paying customer never encounters a crashed page because a newsletter was sending in the background. Deciding to disable the default trigger is only the first step. If you set up the replacement mechanism incorrectly, you instantly neutralize all of those resource benefits. Using curl routes an HTTP request back into your web server, occupying an entry process slot exactly like a human visitor. This offers no relief. WP-CLI instead loads WordPress via command line, bypassing the web server completely and leaving your resource pool untouched. If your goal is to genuinely protect your visitor worker threads and stabilize your hosting environment, utilizing WP-CLI is the only valid architectural solution. To safely migrate your site to a system-level cron without dropping data, you need to follow a very precise order of operations. The single most common way site owners break their installations is by disabling the page load trigger before they have fully built and tested the replacement server cron. Reversing those steps creates a silent failure gap. The scheduled tasks die, the subscription emails stall, and because you explicitly told WordPress to stop checking the queue, it provides absolutely no error warnings to let you know things are broken. To avoid this, Step 1 is exclusively to open cPanel and create your new server cron job first, making sure to use the wp-cli command. Set your interval carefully to avoid wasting CPU cycles booting WordPress for an empty queue. Use 15 minutes for standard architecture and dial it down to 5 minutes for heavy WooCommerce environments. Building that replacement infrastructure first is the absolute only way to guarantee your background automation never drops into a silent void. With the safety net in place, step 2 is to open your wp-config.php file and insert the disable constant on a single line, exactly above the stop editing comment. Step 3 is the most critical part of the migration. You have to stop and wait one full interval cycle to verify that the new architecture is actually running. Check the queue from the command line using the wp-cli event list command. This outputs the status of every scheduled item and proves whether the server clock has successfully taken over. Look at the tasks that were due. If they have successfully processed and pushed their next runtimes into the future without backing up, you have confirmation that the migration is complete and fully functional. Ultimately, the decision comes down to what kind of site you run. If you manage a standard brochure or blog site, leave the default WP-Cron entirely alone. It is handling the job efficiently. But if you run a demanding WooCommerce store or need to guarantee exact automation timing, migrating to a wp-cli server cron will give you the precise, reliable control your business requires.